Hello, everyone. It's Odin here, your friendly neighborhood Odin. Drawing more on this piece. I have gotten a bit more from the last time, so we're getting closer to completion. Actually, redo this. Getting closer. But yeah, it's Monday evening. Had a nice weekend with my daughters. And, well, two of them. One of them stayed at a friend's, which was fine. They're going to move soon, so I'm giving her as much time with their friends as possible. So, but yeah, it was a good time. And then I played softball last night. We got our asses kicked, and I'm sore, which is ridiculous. My elbow, right. I don't know if you can see that right there. It's kind of reddish. It's a big lump. Misfielding a ground ball. So, sometimes I get some topspin English on them and you misjudge it. Actually, I thought I read it right. I just put my mitt in the wrong area and it rolled up, and I don't know how it hit me there, but right on the bone, right on the point where that elbow, like you've got the big point at the bottom, but then there's this other point right there. And I went, ding! Hurt. Still hurts. But we're all right. What hurt the most was losing. But yeah, then... but I was going to talk a little bit about... It's actually one of my favorite movies, and it's misunderstood, in my opinion. So my daughter, my oldest daughter, my other daughter was younger, and she was entertaining herself. But my older daughter, I'm like, hey, let's watch a movie. What do you want to watch? And I'm like, well, she couldn't think of anything. I'm like, well, what style? What do you feel like watching? And I'll find something cool, because I like showing her shit that's cool. She's really into survival and survival skills. And when I showed her Rambo First Blood a while back, or years ago actually, but like, it's one of her favorite movies. It's one of my favorite movies, and we've watched that one many times. And she said, I don't know, something like survival outdoors like Rambo or Journey of Natty Gann, if anybody's ever seen that. It's an awesome movie. I'm pretty sure it was a Disney movie, but it's live action. It's got John Cusack, but like the main girl, I mean, everything about it was actually really awesome. I think it was in Oregon, in the forest. A lot of cool scenery. Everything was cool. For a kid's movie, it was really awesome. So she's like, something along those lines. Well, I'm like, well, I don't want to watch Rambo again. We've watched it enough. I mean, that sounds bad because I'm probably down to watch it anytime. But I want, anytime I get an opportunity, I want to show her something cool, something she hasn't seen before. So I thought for a bit, wilderness survival movie. And then it came to me, and I'm like, oh, I know which one we're watching. This is going to be great. And then I was like, well... There's a thing about this movie, so I'm curious if anyone's picked up on which movie before I say it. If anybody watching, I don't know if anyone's watching, but if anyone's watching and kind of picks up on which movie I'm going for. So it's an older movie, predates Rambo. The movie's called Deliverance. Now, most people, it is infamous for one particular scene. And most people, when you mention that movie, they're just going to talk about that. They've probably never seen it, but they've heard about that scene, and that's all they know. That and banjos, and they go, well... But the movie itself is one of the best... The acting, the writing, the different personalities, and when you're in the situation... I love movies when you're in the situation, like, how are you going to handle it? You're in a fucked up situation that you would never expect to be in, Lord willing, but you're there. And you're there with some other people. And they're totally different temperaments than you. And what are you going to do? How are you going to survive this fucked up situation that you had no idea you were going to encounter that day? And That movie is phenomenal at that. So if anyone doesn't know, yeah, paint a little picture of what this movie's about here. The legendary scene, if anyone's heard the phrase "squeal like a pig," especially in regards to rape, that's where this comes from. So the movie is Burt Reynolds, who was phenomenal in this, kind of the ultimate badass, but, you know, he had his moments too, where he was just a normal guy, you know, had to deal with some craziness. He plays Lewis, and he has one friend, Ed, played by Jon Voight. So both went on to really successful careers, but this was kind of a breakout for both of them in a lot of ways. I think, well, Jon Voight was a Midnight Cowboy, but excuse me. So they're about to flood this river and these whole towns and build a giant reservoir dam for hydroelectricity. So before they flood this river, the idea is they're going to go on a canoe trip down the river. I can't remember the name of it. It's a native name for this river. Set in Georgia, I believe. In the South, anyway. And Ed brings along two of his friends that were like kind of businessmen. One of them is... can't remember the actor's name, but he plays... can't remember the character's name. He's kind of the least important. But he's very idealistic. He's a guitar player. Kind of folksy. But very idealistic. He believes in the rule of the law, which comes into play. But he's a nice enough chap. And he also brings along, I think it was Ned Beatty. No relation to Warren Beatty. And Ned Beatty is a little chubby. Very salesman-like, you know, he can talk, but he's not rugged at all. And then Burt Reynolds' character, Lewis, is like total outdoorsman, gung-ho about being in the outdoors and surviving. And he's all about that. Just very Rambo-like in his own way. So, they go on this canoe trip. They stop for the night. Ned Beatty's character's getting on Burt Reynolds, getting on his nerves. Keeps calling him chubby because he's tired of him being just a city boy. So anyway, without giving the whole thing away, they stop for a while. Two of them stop. So they're in two canoes, 2 by 2. 2 in one, 2 in the other. Two of them stop, but they're waiting for the other guys. While they stop, they run into trouble. To say the least. They run into the worst. And I don't think this represents all of hillbilly culture. I'm just going to say it. And I think they show that in the movie. This is an isolated case of two really messed up individuals just happen to be in the woods at the same time. Well, poor Ned Beatty. His character, what was his name in the movie? I can't remember, but these hillbillies, they sodomize at gunpoint, make him squeal like a pig, while Jon Voight's character Ed is tied to a tree, forced to watch with a gun at him as well. Now, Ned Beatty went on to act in a lot of things. So we're watching that movie, and I talked to my daughter about this. She's 15, so I'm like, here's the deal. There's this scene. We don't have to watch it, and she insisted that we skip the scene, and I was fully happy to do that. I'm like, it's really part of the movie as far as, like, it almost like you have to be dragged into that you don't want to go there. Nobody wants to go there, but to understand the next part. But I think she got it. She goes, no, I do not want to watch that. I'm like, I don't want to watch it either. Fine skipping ahead. But I'll tell you, this is what happens. And Ned Beatty, like I said, he went on to. I would think that would like really damage your career, but I'm not gonna lie. His acting was good there. It's believable. It was just fucked up. I'm trying not to like laugh too much about it because it's really fucked up. But he had to sign on the dotted line to be in the movie after reading the script, knowing he's going to play this character, and he had to go through with the scene, and he had to try to have a successful career afterwards. So I don't think he's any relation to Warren Beatty, the notorious Lothario and ladies' man, because he's just not that guy. But he went on to play a lot of spot characters and did really well. But I think they should have given him a fucking Oscar. I mean, it was too damn believable, and that's why it's so off-putting. Yeah, well, and then the hillbilly guy, who he's acted in other things too. Just too damn believable. So those guys deserve Oscars because you really feel. But that. So anyway, back to the movie. We'll get past the rape scene. That's what's great about this movie is you feel like you're in the situation with them, and part of the reason you feel that way is because those moments feel so real. That moment felt too real. But then again, like I said, no one talks about anything else from that movie. Whereas I talk about regularly how badass Burt Reynolds' character was and how badass he looked. Honestly, he looked like my dad. Like when my dad would shave his mustache. So when Burt Reynolds grows his mustache, my dad and him don't look much alike. But when he shaves it like he was in Deliverance, he looks like my dad at that age. So anyway, great acting, and then the whole situation after the rape scene is still extremely intense. So anyway, that happens, and then Burt Reynolds and the other guy show up, and you just see out of the corner of your eye, because they're bow hunters, Burt Reynolds take an aim, and Jon Voight's his neck's tied to a tree with a belt, and he's just watching as Burt Reynolds lining up a shot on the rapist dude and kills him. And then they all have to figure out this guy's dead. They chased the other guy off and stole his gun, but he's out in the woods now. They didn't stop him. And the rapist dude's there dead, and they got to figure out what to do. So the one guy who's like super idealistic, he's like, we go to the law and tried by jury. And Burt Reynolds with a great line. He's like, yeah, there'll be a trial by jury. You think I want that? Hell, everybody's related in this area. What, his mother, his sister, his cousin, all in the jury box? Anyway, the scene is notorious, infamous, I guess. But the movie, one of the landscape, the beauty of the rafting, or the canoeing, and just the scenery around, how well it was acted, how well there was written. Like, these characters were kind of like perfectly different to give it tension, you know. And then takes a look at kind of like hillbilly culture and the good and the bad of it, I guess, you know. Because at the end, or once they find town again, they're taken in with kind of like nicer hillbillies who were feeding them a nice home-cooked meal and talking about farming, but like being funny, and everybody's having a great time, and they were super hospitable and nice. It was like kind of showing the dichotomy of like yeah, they're not all, forest sodomizers at gunpoint. Like, some of them are pretty cool, like. And again, probably most of them are not. You just had some bad luck. You didn't meet George's finest there in that moment. But again, Burt Reynolds, just so badass in that movie. I mean, you watch it, you're like, I want to be like that. Like, he's just seriously take charge. But he understood. He had survival skills, and he had bow hunting skills. And one of the greatest things, though, is Jon Voight's character. So, like, he's good friends with Burt Reynolds' character, but he's not fully embraced the outdoors life. Actually, kind of more embraced, civilian life in the suburbs with his nice job and his wife and kids. Burt Reynolds kind of chides him for that, but Jon Voight's character is just kind of wishy-washy. Jon Voight's character, Ed, he's kind of on the fence. He's a little of both. He doesn't know, and then faced with that situation, he just watches buddy get sodomized forcefully and treated horribly, and thinking he's probably next, and that they're probably just going to kill him afterwards. So he's in this very tense moment just to have his other friend shoot the guy with an arrow. They have to deal with that, the whole thing, just trying to deal with it. And they're deciding what to do with the dead body, and he's like, you could tell he's wishy-washy, he's not quite. But when Burt Reynolds' character gets injured, breaks his femur, I'm sorry, this is like all spoilers. If you're going to watch the movie, I should have said this at the beginning. Don't listen to me. But you should watch the movie if you have. Burt Reynolds' character breaks his femur, and now he has to take charge and take care of business and make those hard decisions, and they were very hard decisions. That was the thing. Was it the right choice? There's more than just what to do with the dead body. There was other things going on, and you go, was this the right choice given the circumstances? And you have to make a split-second decision. You don't have time to sleep on it. That's what I loved about that movie. That, and the scenery was beautiful. And the music was awesome. Dueling Banjos is a great song. Or Feuding Banjos, or just an intense movie. My daughter loved it. I think, and I'm very glad she didn't have to, it's almost like, can we watch it without that? But she even told me, and I agree, it's like I can watch violence in movies, even like the bad kind, like the bad guy torturing a good person or something, isn't as bad as rape. Like in a movie, it's so unsettling. And I can't remember the name of it. Matt Damon, whatever the guy who played Kylo Ren, what the fuck's his name? Anyway, Matt Damon. It was a Ridley Scott movie, but it was a Renaissance period. And it tells the story through 3 different perspectives. And I saw it like a while back, so I don't really remember the whole thing. But I just remember it was a retelling of this tale. First from Matt Damon's character, where he looks like the hero. He's doing all the right things. Then they tell it through the Kylo Ren, whatever his name was. And then they tell it through the girl in the movie. Well, the girl got raped by Kylo Ren, whatever his name is. I can't remember his name. And if somebody told me, I'd be like, well, of course, that's his name. I remember. I love saying that. The girl got raped by Kylo Ren. So she did. But you get 3 different versions of the story. So you have to watch it 3 times. And it's different in each one. Like, through Kylo Ren's lens, from his perspective, you could see that she was fighting him off, but it seemed a little more playful. Again, this is his perspective, because this is a time period women were, more seen and not heard, or obscene and not heard almost. But, and then from her perspective, it was pretty nightmarish. But like, yeah, I'm like, dang it, I'll watch this one more time. Yeah. So yeah, that one's always disturbed me, and I think, having daughters and just how many women I've met who've said they've gone through that. Like pretty much every woman I've dated has told me a story, and it's just fucked up. So yeah, it's really disturbing, and it hits in that that feeling that you don't want. My daughter that was watching with, she's very empathetic. Again, she's learned to handle violence or whatever, but that one gets her, and I don't blame her. I'm the same way. So we didn't watch it, but implied was more than enough, and I kind of told her like, this scene you don't want to see it anyway. So. But that said, she loved the movie, as do I. Because I got really curious when it was notorious for one thing, and I'm like, well, I gotta, curiosity will always get me. But then I was just so overly impressed by the movie itself, and the acting and the writing, so. Yep. That was Deliverance. And then I was like, okay, what are some other good ones? Kind of survivalist movies. There was The Edge with Anthony Hopkins, Alec Baldwin. But that one's like so kind of 90s bad. Some of those... Every generation has a feel, whether it's the music, the movies, the music videos. So I could watch a music video and be like, yeah, that's from the 90s, that's from the 70s, that's from the 80s, Music has that. Every generation kind of has a feel to it. And I'm just going to say it, like 90s movies were not my favorite. 90s comedies, I think, were the best. I think the best ever. But 90s action... really falls short. Anything that has computer graphics is pretty bad because it was when it first started. So yeah, like action, I always go 80s. Sci-fi, 80s, 70s. That's my go-to. The 90s, it's the comedy generation for me. Like I loved the comedies. Now, I give it like Quentin Tarantino style movies. That was pretty good. That was really like a staple in the 90s of that like caper gone wrong kind of feel, and a lot of heavy dialogue, interesting camera angles. But that all started with Tarantino, and like that was a good thing that came out in the 90s. But the overall action movies were pretty bad. The sci-fi, some of it was all right. Like Event Horizon, that was pretty good. And I like the Aliens movies that were coming out, even though they were widely regarded as some of the worst Alien movies in the franchise. But I liked them. So some of the sci-fi wasn't bad, as long as it was like sci-fi horror. It did all right. So some of the horror in the 90s wasn't too bad, outside of the cheesy shit, like I know you did last summer or something like that. Anyway, we'll probably wrap this up. Seemed like there was something else I was gonna comment on in this. Oh, I was gonna tell you about the Who concert. It was actually really fucking cool. So if you haven't listened to them, the Mongolian band, the Who, H-U, not Pete Townsend, but go check it out. It's fun. It's very different. They do a mix of traditional Mongolian instrumentation and singing, mixed with some modern day like heavier metal elements. And the concert was a blast. Very tribal. I mean, they use a lot of the same beat, but it's that beat that, everybody, you just feel it. It's a very intense tribal feel, which I think heavy metal concerts always have a tribal feel. But, specifically when they're like, hey, we're Mongolian, it's, for lack of a better word, it's their gimmick, it's their shtick. So they're going to be like all about our tribe, our heritage, and it just reminds me kind of like Sepultura back in the days with Roots album, and some of the Soulfly stuff where it's so rhythm centric that it does have that tribal sense, and but then adding the power of heavy metal behind it. They're not as heavy as like Sepultura and stuff like that, but it was a blast. Highly recommended. Very fun. Uploaded a snippet of it, the song Wolf Totem. So yeah, it was really cool. So if they come through your town, make sure you see it. They're not famous enough that they're playing like a giant arena, so you can go for fairly cheap. But this one was on my buddy. It was really cool of him to invite me, and we had a blast. So yeah, and that was at the Knitting Factory here in Spokane, and I've played that place. I think I counted. It's almost 25 times. Can't remember what my final count was now, but it was over 20. Over 20 times I've played that place. It's a really cool place. Like, again, it's not a huge stadium, but it's not a bar. It's a legit music venue, and it can hold up to 2,000 or 3,000 people. I think 1,500 to 3,000, somewhere in that range. But when you're playing it, so we played a lot of basically sold out shows, and when it's at capacity, it looks really cool. It's fun, and once we got to know the crew, the sound guy, the lighting guys, the general manager, they really started taking care of us, and it was a blast. So speaking of Soulfly, we opened for them there, and that was a blast. But so I hadn't been back since I walked away from music. That was the first time I stepped back into the Knitting Factory in Spokane. So it was interesting just being back, because that was the place where I decided to quit music. I was in the dressing room at the Knitting Factory, and that's when I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I was divorced from my wife. I hadn't seen my kids in a while. And a lot of the reason why that it was all happening was because of the toll and the time the band took to try to be a successful musician. And after the show, everyone was going to meet at this club down the street, kind of have like an after party, hang out, have some drinks and hang out. And I told everyone, I'll meet you down there. It's just walking distance, But I wore like a stage costume, basically. I'm like, I gotta go change. So I'm in the dressing room by myself, and that's just sitting there going like, I miss my daughter so much, and I don't want to go to this party. I just want to be home with them. But I couldn't because I was divorced, and they were staying with their mom, and but I missed them so much, and I felt such a strong sense that it was time to make that decision and just leave it. Because I was just sitting there by myself, and I was going, this is the life you're going to live. You're going to be in dressing rooms, you're going to be in buses, you're going to be on the road, and you're just going to sit there and go. And it was probably one of our best shows ever. Quite possibly the best performance I ever put on. That we ever put on. And I'm sitting there going like, I don't care. Like I didn't care after the moment. I just wanted my kids. And so that was the turning point. That was it. I was just like, it was a real honest question of myself. Is this the life you want? You're going to be in this situation. You're going to play a show. You're going to walk off. And you're going to go back to a bus or a dressing room, and you're going to go, man, I miss my kids. And you're not getting the time back with them. They're not going to stop growing while you go and play rock star. So I just had to make that choice, and there's never been any regret about it. People have asked me that before, or if I miss, there's certain elements I miss, of course, but I don't miss them in the sense of regret or any kind of resentment about the decision. Ever since I made it, I felt good about it. And so that was the end of my performing musician career. And it was fun while it lasted. And boy, oh boy, people tried to hit me up to be in their band a lot afterwards. But we've transitioned. Now I have a different creative outlet, which is artwork. And going all out on making a comic, which was my first love before I got into music and singing. So we're getting closer. This page is nearly done. And then really I got 10 to 12 pages more after this, and maybe more. It kind of depends. The ending, we can go a lot of directions. So, but it's about 10 to 12 pages more, and then that's it. Work on lettering. Still on the fence about coloring. I think I may do it as it's kind of one of those stretch goals on Indiegogo, because at this point I don't trust my colors, and I don't want to pay anybody anything. This is my baby. I'll just do it and see how much I can recoup of my own and how much I lose of my own, so I can have a real sense of what it's like just making a black and white comic and see how well it does. So with that said, we're getting closer. So this one, I'll try this. We got a clear, let's go this way. A clear picture. I'm trying to get the whole thing in there of what we're looking at there. Again, 2-page spread. I lost a little motivation for a while, and so it's taken a while to get the ball rolling again. But we're nearly done with this, and boom, on to the next page, and I feel like it's come back. So, yeah, we'll just keep working on it. But I'm gonna end the video now. Enough rambling about Deliverance and the Who, and my own band experience. Enough of that. So I'm gonna end it. This is Odin. I really do hope anybody who watches this is doing phenomenally awesome, and that whatever creative pursuit you're doing is bringing you all the fulfillment, and that you're doing it with passion and power. This is Odin. See ya.